So some of you may remember that we had Reverend Greg Coles here a few weeks ago. This was right before the vote. Greg was here really at that first level of the who, like who we are, the stuff that we're getting ready to vote to sell this. It was very there were a lot of external factors that were really a dimension of our being together, right? It was all about that sort of lower level. And he was here to allow us to sort of give voice to that. And so we did a wonderful listening circle, and that was part one of a 3-part process that we're moving into as we start to create a higher level consciousness to engage in the question of what comes next. Does that make sense? So there's a progression that's happening within us as a community that sort of mirrors this whole process. The next step in that process, and you'll hear about it in the announcements, is really a time when he's going to be back in a couple of weeks in November. He'll be here on a Sunday. And it's really a time for us to make sure that we're connecting and honoring the past. It's a time to really engage with one another and to kind of build through that activity level, right? The actions that we take to be able to come back together. The vote wasn't unanimous, so we have people sort of it all. We have some people who are already out looking at properties. I get emails saying, this is where we want to go. We ought to check this one out. And we have some people who are like, I'm just not sure that Unity Church is a community that I'm going to be engaged in. See, we have that sort of disconnect stuff that is common at that level of coming out of a who kind of consciousness. So this activity level is for us to come together and start to rebuild those connections as we move up to a level of consciousness that's going to free us to be most creative, right? So that third part will come in January. Reverend Greg will be back, and we'll be doing an appreciative inquiry process. Those of you who may not be familiar with that, it's really just sort of these interviews that we'll do one-on-one. We'll sort of team up throughout the community and talk about the things that are, or the qualities, the programming, or the attributes that are most attractive for us, that really ground us in being together in spiritual community on the North Shore. So that appreciative piece will happen all through December and into January as we're undergoing some of these interviews, these appreciative inquiry interviews. So that's how this ladder of consciousness, from personal, to the impersonal, to the eternal, to the creative piece. That's how we're going to create some structure around it for us as a ministry as we engage in this question. So I want to invite all of you to, as you can register for both of the workshops that are a part of this. They're on the website now. And the more broadly we experience that together, the more folks who will participate in that, the greater the energy and the better answers we'll have as we begin to create the strategy for actually going out and looking at properties and picking what we need. But we sort of need to, we're doing this by principle, guys. We're doing it, everything we say, we teach, is that it comes out of consciousness first, right? If we're coming at it from a consciousness of possibility and growth and development, then that's what we'll embody. So we're starting with the consciousness that we're building over the next couple of months, and then once we get through the January piece, we'll be able to pull together a strategy that we can begin to look for answers and solutions to, okay, where are we going next? Because I know that's sort of a piece that's on a lot of our minds and hearts. So that's the process. Okay, now a couple other announcements that are going on sort of behind the scenes. Since the sale, since the congregation approved the sale, a lot of what's happening is now sort of out of our hands. The city and the buyer and the neighbors are meeting and they're getting together, that kind of stuff. There is a little bit of due diligence happening for us to make sure that we've got everything in order when it comes time to close the sale. In the meantime, Ruth Runeberg has doing a marvelous job of pulling together a team that's really going to figure out the logistics of, moving stuff. So she's helping to sort of set the stage for that and create a consciousness for openness and generosity as we move into that piece. And then the other thing to be aware of, and we haven't quite launched it yet, but it's all ready to go, is a new website specifically for RPH, Right and Perfect Home kind of questions. It'll have the communications that we have sent out over the course of time. It'll have some links to different resources that we're using as we start to really evaluate some of the dynamics that are shaping how churches are meeting together, not just Unity churches, but other churches. So it'll be a resource for you that we'll make available public. So it's not like nothing has been happening. Some of the action has shifted. And especially we're wanting to focus, the most important pieces for us are these new next two steps up this ladder of consciousness. So please check out your calendars and get those workshops on the calendar so that you can continue to be a part of the energy that we're creating here at Unity on the North Shore, right? We want to all come from the consciousness of being puppies. Total possibility, total playfulness. That there is definitely a beautiful future for us as we begin to engage and embody it together.